kinds of fun stuff today. We got giveaways. We've got really great movies to cover. Still kind of in the trailing off of Oscar season. And Tim, by Jove, the Writers Guild did it.
Yeah. They stood in there and they did not blink.
The agents blinked for 6 days, or they bluffed. And for those who aren't following this, which we have touted, so the 6th was the expiration of the 43-year contract between agents and writers, which has been in effect since before Star Wars was released. And it's kind of weird, right? Every 43 years.
I just can't. It's just so arbitrary. I mean, it's just so. Why exactly 40?
Well, because once upon a time, they just figured, you know what? You're not really. All you're really doing is being agents. We'll just make it really long. What's the point in renegotiating this? What's going to change? Well, since 1976, everything changed.
Well, yeah, but why not 40? Or 45, or even 50. Exactly, what genius says, 43.
I don't know. But in any case, so that expired on April 6th, and with like 90 minutes or 2 hours left before the expiration, the agents begged for another 6 days to come up with something, and then what they came up with was just more of the same. It was a bunch of junk, and the writers said, yeah, not so much. Try again.
Yeah.
And then on the 13th, people started firing their agents.
Yeah.
And we know people who have fired their agents.
Yeah.
I mean, all my name screenwriter friends were like, yep, done. Here it is.
Yeah, it was always in their interest to make sure that their agents were serving their interests. And for years, that hasn't been true. These agents have not been serving these writers' direct interests for a long, long time.
The offer on the table was, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll keep packaging. We'll keep the packaging fees, but we will now share 0.8% of our packaging fees with you. And the writers are like, really? 0.8%? How'd you come up with 0.8 as
like
opposed
the 43-year thing? Yeah,
like you couldn't just come up to 1. Couldn't make it an even 1% just to insult us properly.
You know what? This really is about greed, though, right? So
of course
in the aggregation of wealth and power, not just the wealth, but also the power, because with that wealth came a certain amount of power.
Yeah.
There was going backwards in time just a little bit. There was a moment in the history of Hollywood when the studio was the thing.
Yeah.
The studio and the studio boss were the thing.
That's right.
Agents were important, but actors worked for studios and worked for
and the studio when they had contracts, when you were contract players and directors, and the studio owned you.
And along came all kinds of legal situations.
Olivia de Havilland.
Yeah, Olivia de Havilland. and the studio system fell apart. Actors became sort of the thing for a while there.
Yeah.
So you had the sort of powerful actor and perhaps their agent. And then the truly powerful agency situation came in. Mike Ovitz and all those guys in the heady days of the late 80s and early 90s, where the agencies became the power brokers in town. Studios became distributors and sometimes financiers of films. But it was the agencies that really had the power, particularly
to put movies together.
Yeah. And that's when all of this began.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for close to 30 years now.
Well, it's the thing that is most galling to me is that, and to the Writers Guild too, was it right when they were having these negotiations, Endeavor, the parent company of William Morris Endeavor, WME, was actually still moving forward with their talks to have a public offering. And the Writers Guild said, wait a minute, you're not serious in these negotiations, because if you become a public company, now your first responsibility is to shareholders, not to your clients. We want you to work for us, not for shareholders. We're not going to become just an asset in a basket for some hedge fund
that wants quarterly
earnings reports. Yeah. So these are the stakes. The agencies are saying this is going to create chaos in the business. And the funny thing is, I have talked to people with the MPAA. I have talked to people who are in the upper echelons of the studios. I have talked to people in the at IFTA, the independent equivalent of the MPAA, who runs the American film market and represents all the independents. I have talked to people who are DGA members. I've talked to people in the Producers Guild and in SAG. I've had casual conversations with all these people, with rank and file Teamsters and editors, local members. I mean, all of them. And to a one, Without exception, every single last one of them says, I hope they wipe the agents. Every single one of them. The agents are like, you're going to have chaos without us. And all I could think of was, this is almost literally like Tony Montana at the end of Scarface saying, say hello to my little friend, and thinking he is the man, and firing that big old gun and get it off, man. That's the last shot you're going to get, because everybody else is going to machine gun your ass in about 15 seconds.
The backbone of the powerful agency days has been broken. It's over. It lasted about 30 years, and it's over. And and what's ridiculous about it is it really was only about 25, 30 years. Yeah. So the model already exists for the way this works. You're an agent. You get 10% of your clients of what you get for your clients. The way you make more money is you get more money clients. You get more clients and get more money for all of them. And, and your wage goes up. That's the way you make more money. And it doesn't have anything to do with being in the movie producing and owning business. No. They just
decided that because they controlled a lot of talent and had a lot of power, that they could reinvent the business model. And it's not a business model that can be reinvented or should be reinvented. It needs to stay as it always was. They got away with
it for a while.
They did.
You know, and frankly, it was the thing that just sort of creeped up on us, because for a while there, we were all sort of enamored of these power agents. What was that movie Kevin Spacey made? Swimming with Sharks.
Swimming with Sharks, yeah.
Middle 90s, early 90s, whatever it was. Yeah. And that was sort of the shape of these things. The thing of it is, he's the hero of that movie.
You had Swimming with Sharks. You had Entourage. You had, for a brief moment, the Jay Moore Show Action.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
We were sort of glamorizing in a mafioso kind of way.
Exactly.
This particular agent attitude, like, oh, look how badass he is. And then people realized, oh yeah, no, he's kind of a jerk. We're not gonna, no, I don't think I like that guy
and
anymore.
Through him, I look like a jerk as a client. You know, that guy makes me look like a jerk. So it's a new world.
It is, and it's quite interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where it all goes. I think it has to go to the courts. It's going to have to go to the courts, and the old MCA ruling is going to reflect poorly on them. And again, I thought, the people at Endeavor, this is where I wonder, when people get to be that powerful and rich, you assume that there is a certain level of smarts. But there isn't. Money will make you stupider than anything. Yeah. Money and sex make people stupid.
Yeah.
That's just the desire for those two things will make you stupid. Yeah. That's a lesson from the DigiGods, listeners.
Yeah.
Money and your thirst for money and your thirst for sex will make you do stupid things.
Never truer words spoken. You know what's interesting about this, though? It is a moment, one of the few, frankly, in Hollywood, where the power has accrued back to the talent. Now, during the halcyon days of sort of like late 80s, 90s, 2000s, talent in terms of big movie stars.
Yes.
That talent, the Tom Hanks and everything. But this is the first time writers...
The reason this works out well is because writers control the material. Writers always get crapped on, so they already have a chip on their shoulder. And, everybody's always like, oh, yay, look at the actor, and it's a director's medium and a hotshot producer, and there's a writer somewhere going, but I wrote it.
Yeah.
I wrote it. Hello, I'm here too. Yeah. I may be kind of an obese, little, hairy, unhygienic guy sitting in a closet somewhere who doesn't like the limelight, but I'm part of this too. And writers are kind of sick of that.
Yeah.
So they realized that the root of the whole packaging scam was the material. If you take the scripts away, you ain't got nothing to package.
Exactly.
There's nothing there.
Exactly.
That pulls the whole thing out by the root.
It's about time. It's about time that writers started to matter again.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not all done yet, but it's never going to be the same.
Well, this is a couple of writers saying this here.
Yes, but it's true.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, in other news, we haven't had any listener mail for a long time. We haven't really solicited it because we have the CineGods page and the DigiGods page where people can start conversations, and we answer and we participate in all that stuff. But you can always email us at gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. And we had an email here from Jason Lair, who said in one of the last podcasts, you mentioned that you've been listening to podcasts following this packaging fees issue. I would be quite interested to know which ones, if you could send a link or just a name, and I'll look it up on iTunes. And while I know there isn't any actual news, what's your guess about a possible Blu-ray release of Jim Cameron's The Abyss? Thanks, and keep up the great show. So first on the Abyss thing, there isn't any. Presumably, there is a... he's working on it, but he's doing so many other things with the Avatar sequels and everything else that it's I'm sure on the back burner. So we'll see it at some point, but who knows when. The podcast I referred him to with respect to all the stuff that's going on with the WGA and the ATA and all that is the Script Notes podcast, which is hosted by John August and Craig Mazin, both of them A-list screenwriters. John August is in the news again. He's been hired to write Summer Loving, the prequel to Grease, which I cannot endorse in any fiber of my being. Grease doesn't need any kind of a prequel, but nonetheless, it's Script Notes, and you can go to johnaugust.com/podcast. johnaugust.com/podcast, and that's where you can find Script Notes, one word, Script Notes. And it's a podcast that they've been doing on a weekly basis since 2011, kind of like ours. And I don't know how they have time to keep writing scripts too. But anyway, it's a good podcast, and there's a lot of good stuff on it, especially with respect to the current situation. So I'd recommend that. Also, got an email from Al Lai, one of our longtime listeners, which he kind of copied us on all of his complaints. Going through the new Criterion Collection streaming channel, which is now launched. It launched like the day after the Writers Guild and the ATA, the agents, had their little extension. And we're curious. Please email us at gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com and let us know what your experience is. He was having some buffering issues, Al was. And it seemed to be intermittent, might be related to his ISP, but he was saying that he went onto YouTube and some other streaming channels that did not show the same problems. So I've been playing around with the Criterion channel now for about the last 5-6 days. I'm loving it. I'm not having any problems, but I'm watching it on Apple TV, and that app works beautifully. Also have an app on Android TV that I've been playing around with, little less robust, but I have fast internet, so I'm not necessarily a perfect trial case. But I'd love to know if anybody else out there is trying it and how it's faring. And by all means, if you're still within your trial month period and there are problems, let the people at Criterion know, because there are a lot of kinks and technical glitches that it sometimes takes time to work out. Filmstruck didn't really work out its kinks for about 3 or 4 months, and a lot of these services really are just using platforms that somebody else wrote, so they have to make a lot of their own adjustments over time, and that has to do with traffic and subscribership and other things. So let us know, gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com, and use those same 2 emails for our first giveaway. Send us an email to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com and put Bumblebee in the subject line. And as long as it gets to us by the 22nd, Monday the 22nd, dated no later than Monday the 22nd, we will select 2 very lucky people to receive the 4K of Bumblebee, which we reviewed on the last show, courtesy of Paramount. They're going to send you a couple of 4K Bumblebees. Just put Bumblebee in the subject line and your name and address in the body of the email, and that will do it. This is limited to people in North America. Only Canada and the U.S. Outside the U.S., unfortunately, not eligible as per rules from Paramount. So that is Bumblebee plus name and address to gods@digigods.com, gods@cinegods.com. We'll pick a winner by no later than the 22nd, and let 2 very lucky people know what Paramount will be sending you. With that, let's get into some titles.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with some cult stuff and kind of culty and cult-related stuff. But first, before that, I want to make mention of the the release of the Blu-ray, the Cinedigm Blu-ray, for yet another fine Super Bowl. New England Patriots Super Bowl 53 champions, and what a game it was. There was almost no scoring in this thing. I made fun of everybody who's ever made fun of me for liking soccer. There were fewer touchdowns here than there were goals in the last World Cup by a significant margin, so I don't want to hear it anymore. Don't want to hear it anymore at all. It wound up being a 13-3 victory. Is that like the lowest Super Bowl score in history?
Oh, dude, I quit watching football in 1987 after Doug Williams won.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Redskins.
Yeah.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
I tapped out. That was good.
And his career kind of ended after that. They traded him, or he got injured or something.
He got injured, went down, coached for several years now in Florida. Doug had a good one.
He was a really good guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, this is fun. They've got all kinds of extras on here, fun opening night stuff and post-game ceremonies and a little look back on NFL highlights, and it's really good. And it's on a Blu-ray. It's fun. It's good. This is really all you need. I know they come out with these bigger box sets, but this is really all you need. If you're a Patriots fan, especially if you hate the Patriots, you're not going to want this anywhere near you. It's just the worst thing in your life to keep being reminded of Tom Brady. He just keeps winning Super Bowls, and he's going to be playing till he's 55, and who knows? Yeah. It's going to be crazy, and he's got a hot wife and beautiful kids, and it's like, curse him. Horrible man. All right, we also have a couple here from Artsploitation Films. These are cool, little low budget genre films, but they're worth checking out. Artsploitation comes up with a lot of interesting stuff that sort of comes. There are thousands of movies that get made every year, and they don't go to festivals. They don't make any screens. They just kind of fall out on DVD. And it's worth checking out some of them. They're fun. There's some really interesting ideas. These people cull together a few bucks, and they're able to really stretch a buck and do some things. Somebody by the name of Bobo Cox, K-O-X, is the writer and director of The Man with the Magic Box. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because the tagline on this is a stylish Orwellian Gilliam sci-fi thriller. So we've combined Orwellian with Gilliam. And it's not Gilliam-esque or Gilliamian. It's just Gilliam. Like his name is now an adjective.
Yeah, it's like that, dude.
All right, fair enough. It's kind of weird, but there it is. So anyway, this is a Polish film. Has English subtitles, but it's a cool Polish genre film, and it's about a guy with amnesia who travels into the future, and Warsaw is now this like dystopian society, and he suddenly now discovers, he slowly starts to recover memories that tell him why he lost his memory and what's happened to the world and what happened to him originally. It's actually quite smart and made on a shoestring, and it's really, really kind of cool, and I dug it. So it's worth checking out. It wasn't ever going to make a festival anywhere or anything else, but check that out. Then we also have Terror 5. Terror 5 is a Spanish genre film that is completely off the hook. Spain makes a lot of these things and has ever since the 60s, the days of Jess Franco. It's genre movies and kind of semi-giallo imported Italian stuff. It's very, very deep roots in Spain. And this is from the Rothstein brothers, Sebastian and Federico, who have a little bit of an international profile. And it's basically like a Jim Jarmusch movie with zombies, which, as it happens, Jim Jarmusch just made. Yeah. He just made a zombie movie, and it's going to open the Cannes Film Festival. Yeah. So the Rothstein brothers were there before he was. There's a bunch more stuff going on here. There's a whole lot of weird stuff going on, some psychosexual things and whatnot. And it's a there's like a snuff movie in here, and it's pretty nasty stuff. But for genre fans, it's kind of a cool mashup, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's only 78 minutes long.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right?
You get in, you get out.
That's it. Doesn't need to be longer. Those old Charlie Chan movies were only like 62 minutes.
62, yeah. I love that stuff.
It's like a TV episode, shorter than an episode of Game of Thrones. From Troma, Victor Goodview. Now, like any Troma film, this is just a completely crazed, lunatic Lloyd Kaufman indulgence in low budget and excess. Takes place in Yonkers, and it's about this total deadbeat guy who winds up. Oh, how do I do this without sounding crass? He smokes some bad crack. I guess that's the only way I could do it. He smokes himself some bad crack, but is it really crack or is it something else? And what happens is it kind of hops him and the whole movie up in a really, really weird way. And, it's got a Lloyd Kaufman introduction, commentary, deleted scenes. Sometimes feels like they made it up on the fly. They just kind of kept thinking up weirder and weirder stuff. Sometimes that works. From the Mondo Macabro line of the Greek collection, Volume 3, is a movie called The Wild Pussycat, which is also on here with a bonus feature, The Deserter. The Wild Pussycat. And what a wild movie it is. This is a serious trip from 1970, made in Greece by a director named Christos Kafalis. And it's English subtitles in Greek, and it's just a really, really raw American-style exploitation film, except it was made in Greece. And, it's got pimps and strippers and all that stuff that was kind of de rigueur in the 1960s in American exploitation films, except it's a Greek movie. And it's done a little bit artsy. It's not as faux artsy as the French and the Swedish stuff was from that period, but it's there. Got another trauma film here called Revenge of the Spacemen, which has it. Look at that artwork. That's classic 1955. Beautiful. Big brained alien holding a woman with her green-headed alien holding a woman with showing all kinds of leg and cleavage. That's just the way they made them. Except this wasn't made back then. This was made in 2014, but it really aspires to be one of those 1950s, 1960s styles, and it's just aliens fighting hillbilly kids, and it's just completely bizarre and a total throwback, and it's really kind of fun. It's worth checking out. This is one of the more accessible trauma films in recent years, directed by J.P. Summers. Revenge of the Spaceman. It's a good. If you've seen Mars Attacks, this is like Mars Attacks except not so legit. From the Redemption line that Kino releases as a further going part of the cinema of Jean Rollin, Rollin, the famous French exploitation filmmaker, is Dracula's Fiancee. Jean Rollin basically made really great kind of horror trash, kind of high art trash. And it's oftentimes, as in this one, very overtly Catholicized. And so, you got nuns and you got vampires, and you let the rest of it just kind of write itself. There's also Lost in New York on here as a bonus, which is not that interesting. That's from 1989. But Dracula's Fiancée from 2002, nice little rediscovery, good Blu-ray, and you even have a wolf woman in this. Didn't even know that was a thing. Wrapping out the last few here. Blue Movie is a movie by Wim Verstappen. This is from the Cult Epics library. Cult Epics digs up lots of fun stuff as well. This is a Dutch exploitation movie from 1971. And this also does not overstay its welcome. This is a little artier than most. This definitely goes into that French and Swedish vein that we talked about, where it's trash, but it's really pretty trash. And it's actually really, really pretty trash. It's very, very nicely made. I don't want to compare it to I Am Curious Yellow or I Am Curious Blue, but it was part of a moment in Dutch cinema that did something similar, which is that it tried to sort of push sexual boundaries in an artful way and then internationalize it. But here is what makes this so interesting. From 1971, do you know who the cinematographer of Blue Movie, this nice trashy little Dutch nudie, was? Take a stab. Take a stab.
Let's see. Let's see. Who are the great ones working around back then?
You might know him as the director of Twister.
Really?
Jan de Bont.
Jan director, the cinematographer from that. Jan was the cinematographer. Jan was the cinematographer for years. Yeah.
And it
Speed. Jan was Speed.
That's what makes it artsy. That Jan is he's saying, I'm going to make it look like a real movie. It's not going to look like pornography. I don't do pornography. Jan has that. That's a terrible impression, by the way. But he's.
I haven't thought about Jan in years.
I know he all those guys kind of. They had their big blockbuster moment, and then they went away. And that's Jan and Verhoeven and Wolfgang Petersen,
Yeah.
all those kind of imported Euro big budget blockbustery guys that just made all those big obnoxious movies.
Yeah, yeah.
They just went away.
Yeah, came in.
I mean, Verhoeven's still doing a thing. Wolfgang Petersen hasn't done anything in years.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to, apparently. Last three here from Severin, Invasion of the Blood Farmers. This is on Blu-ray. This is a 1972 classic, only 77 minutes long. You could watch all these in a whole day. Has a commentary with director Ed Adlam and his actress, and moderated by an author who's written a book on some of these kinds of films. A bunch of other little interviews. Fred Elms, I should point out, David Lynch's one-time cinematographer, who my wife had worked with, does also an interview here and talks about this stuff. But here's the thing: this movie is called Invasion of the Blood Farmers. Tim, artwork.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Murderous Farmers.
What is one that I remember with years ago where it was one of those movies? I think it was. I'll have to think of it. They were growing human beings. They would catch the human beings. They take them. They plant them in the backyard. I'll think of it.
Oh gosh, I've seen that.
Yeah, it was just the
What is that
movie.
thing called?
No, yeah, I'll think of it. I couldn't remember the title.
Well, anyway, this movie was made for $24,000. Nobody got paid. They literally, in the notes for this thing, they tell you the cast was paid in beer. Invasion of the Blood Farmers paid its cast with beer. And it is schlocky. It is bloody. It's hilarious. It is truly hilarious. And the thing is, they scanned this from the original negative, and it looks better than I think it's ever looked ever. I guarantee you. The first print of this that went to a theater was probably scratched to hell by the time it went through the projector once. So you're seeing it. You're seeing it probably as good as it's ever going to be seen ever. Anyway, it's quite funny, and an early work by Fred Elms, who would go on to do a lot of great stuff for David Lynch. Really talented cinematographer. Also from Severin, Next of Kin, which is a lot more legit. This thing's actually won some international awards, and kind of deservedly so. This was made in 1989. This is more in the Omen/Exorcist realm of supernatural horror. Came from Australia during the late Ozploitation era, which kind of mostly is the 70s, which includes Mad Max and all that kind of stuff, and gets into a lot of early Peter Jackson and that as well, but does stretch into the 1980s pretty substantially. And it's gory, but it's moody, and it works, and it's very effective. And it basically it's a haunted house thing. It's about a lady who inherits a retirement home, and then of course turns out that it's not just a retirement home. It's got all kinds of history and issues. But it's worthwhile, and one of the Tangerine Dream guys does a pretty eerie score, and it's got some really great imagery, and it's worth checking out. So a bunch of extras on this as well, including a commentary with the director Tony Williams and the producer Tim White, another commentary with some cast members and deleted scenes, extras, trailers, and an alternate opening from the German release, which isn't as interesting as it sounds. It's just there. And then lastly, on DVD only from the Nikatsu Erotic Films collection is Lolita, Vibrator Torture. That's an impulse release. All of these Nikatsu erotic releases are basically pretty much the same. This is about a guy who kidnaps schoolgirls and then takes them back and does horrible things to them. There is nothing redeeming about this, but there's an audience in Japan for this stuff, and presumably outside Japan as well. This is from 1987, kind of on the late stage. The late end of these Nikatsu things, but, kind of sick stuff. I mention it only because I am a river to my people. And I know there are some really deranged listeners to this show that will appreciate it, but I can't really recommend it.
It's a genre for a reason.
Yes, it is.
It's a genre for a
Yes,
reason.
it is. All right, Tim, let's burrow into some new movies.
A few new movies. Let's start. This is interesting because I just noticed the cover of these two DVDs. The Steve Coogan, John C. Reilly film, Stan and Ollie, which I think, end of the season, the award season, people, and there was some good stuff in this movie. Basically, the story of a late tour that Laurel and Hardy took through the UK.
Yeah.
Well after their sort of film and early days of success had ended. The ladies in this movie who play their wives completely and totally steal this film.
They do.
They're just absolutely
the actress who plays Stan Laurel's Russian wife.
Yeah,
whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Well, there's Nina Ariana and Shirley Henderson.
It's Nina Ariana.
Yeah, and she's just so funny.
Wipes the floor of this movie. She just cleans up. She has all the best lines, all the best moments. She is so outrageously funny. She's the reason to see it. I mean, their impression of Laurel and Hardy is great, but she steals the movie.
Yeah, and they are more or less doing these sort of impressions of Laurel and Hardy, and then sort of behind the scenes. Steve Coogan has some stuff in this movie. It's full of pathos. He was the one who wrote all that stuff, by the way.
Yeah, he was the genius.
He was the genius behind it. All those little bits and timed them all out and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it was a fairly funny and moving movie. And if you're fans of that, you might enjoy it. The box of that is almost exactly the same.
I know, isn't that crazy?
As the box for Holmes and Watson,
which is not funny.
Also, John C. Reilly, but Will Ferrell playing Sherlock Holmes in this film, Weapons of Mass Deduction. Look, it's a goofy Sherlock Holmes movie, which just didn't hit the mark.
And what's interesting about that is that Will Ferrell has officially severed his relationship amicably with his longtime partner who directed the next movie you're going to be talking about.
By Adam McKay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they've been doing things together for years and years and years and years.
Yeah, Ricky Bobby and everything else. But
the big Will Ferrell comedies.
Adam McKay is an Oscar winner now. He wants to make real movies.
Yeah, and you have The Big Short, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, this the Will Ferrell Holmes Watson thing, kind of funny, but not really particularly good. A few special features on that. And then we have Vice, a movie that was bumping around during awards season. Christian Bale and Amy Adams and Steve Carell and Sam Rockwell all giving really, really good performances in this movie. This movie is not all that good.
No, it's not.
People want to compare it to The Big Short, but it doesn't really.
No, because the Big Short was the Big Short looked at an actual event and it stitched together several interesting storylines that were all based in actual individuals who all benefited from the financial collapse
because they
all shorted
what was going on.
They understood what was going on, and that's what was interesting about it, is that it was a look at the financial crisis through a web of interconnected but discrete real stories. This is just all. I'm going to try to get inside Dick Cheney's head and I'm going to make a bunch of stuff up and have fun with it. And that's not interesting.
Because I have a particular set of opinions about Dick Cheney and that administration and that's not interesting.
It's a Godard film.
Yeah.
It's Adam McKay's Godard film.
You know, I mean, it's look. I'm not a fan of Dick Cheney, but this movie is not. That movie is not a documentary about Dick Cheney.
Well, no,
you don't know anything about Dick Cheney.
You don't come away knowing anything about Dick Cheney that you didn't know before. If you go into the movie being a Dick Cheney fan, it's going to just piss you off more.
Yeah.
If you go into movie hating Dick Cheney, it's probably going to make you more sympathetic to him because you're going to feel sorry for him for that he was exploited in such a kind of an adolescent way. It's not instructive. It doesn't even try to be instructive. It just sort of goes neener.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they. I mean, it got a lot of Oscar nominations. I think largely because Christian Bale really does a very good impression, not much of a performance, and B, it's a hell of an editing job. I mean, it's still not a good movie, but it's really quite well put together. It's an impressive from a craftsmanship standpoint. But
yeah, what are you gonna do? Welcome to Marwan. Man, this movie really tanked so hard. This movie lost $60 million.
I know.
At the box office. Steve Carell's film from Bob Zemeckis, adaptation from Marwan Call, a documentary about this actual person. And what happened was he was a man who was beaten by these people who found out that he was sort of like a cross-dressing sort of guy, beaten very, very severely. He was a photographer. And in order to deal with that, he created this sort of psychological and actual physical little universe where he would go into. And he built all these little things and took pictures of them with the dolls. This movie portends to take us inside his mind where all of these things sort of come to life, sort of, as little dolls. And
it's my problem with this is that Bob Zemeckis, who is a very talented director. Let's remember, Bob Zemeckis, had his heyday in the '80s, and then he devolved into all of this motion capture nonsense. which he thought was like the
80s,
new
90s,
thing.
yeah. It was
And with the
Polar
Polar
Express
Express and all the rest of that nonsense.
Beowulf. And,
it's horrible. And then he couldn't nobody really caught his vision for all this motion capture stuff. So then he came back and he made Flight.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Flight is a hell of a movie.
Yeah, because it's a movie with Denzel Washington and other human beings.
And a script.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the effects. The crash is the least interesting thing in that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he clearly has fun with it, but once the crash is out of the way, there's no more CGI. There's no motion capture. It's just you got a great actor and you're letting him act and you're dealing with real issues and alcoholism and all this other stuff. And it's a hell of a movie. And now he reverted again. He looked at Marwin Call and he didn't think, oh, this is an interesting character to explore. He thought, look at those miniatures.
I can do something with that technology.
I could bring mocap back, and I could mocap the hell out of all those little miniatures. And it's like that's approaching it the wrong way.
Yeah. He had this deal with I think it was HP back in the day.
Oh, really?
To create, because he did all of that stuff. Everybody else is working it. So anyway, this movie doesn't work at all. Marwin Call, and there are a whole lot of reasons why. A Dog's Way Home, which is based on this novel, is kind of sweet. And you've got Dallas Bryce Howard voicing this dog as he makes this 400 journey. Gets separated. It's sweet, perfectly lovely little sweet movie. There's no Benji. It's no Benji.
I'm tired of dog movies where dogs talk and run away and make friends.
Well, you know how I feel about
they all do this. They're all the same. Okay. I mean, what's the audience for these movies now? Is there still an audience?
Moms and little
kids
girls
and
that kind of thing.
Whatever.
You got one over there?
Yeah, we've got No Alternative, which is a relative. This is a kind of a surprising come from behind movie for me. I was vaguely aware of this in I think the early part of last year when it was around. It's directed by William Dickerson, who also co-wrote it. But it's an interesting 90s. It's funny that we're looking at the 90s as a period era. This is basically a look. We've had all these movies about the new wave scene in the 80s.
Yeah.
This is a coming of age film set in the grunge scene of the 90s.
Yeah. Kurt Cobain and all that.
All that stuff. And, it's about the starting of a bunch of teenagers and starting of a band right after Kurt Cobain has killed himself. And I
remember that movie.
Yeah,
and he has that little sister, but the little sister wants to do hip hop
exactly,
and she starts doing hip hop, which is also a thing that was sort of happening there. But a little white girl doing hardcore hip rap.
Bride B. That's her hip hop name, Bride B. And it's kind of a snapshot of that moment in time and a certain musical moment. It's not bad.
Yeah,
it's really not bad. It's got a cool little vibe to it. And then we also have MFKZ, which is an animated film.
That was so weird. The little half alien kid. He's like solid black, and he has the little friend with the flaming skull head.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an outrageous move from several different animators, but specifically the group Ankama Animations and Studio 4C. This is released by G-Kids through Universal, who's doing all the animation stuff. But basically, these are the people who'd done things like Tekken and the Animatrix, and they're kind of going a little bit out of control here. It feels like a resume piece. It feels like they're just going really, really overboard to say, we can do this, this is our style.
And they're out of their element. These are a bunch of French and
it's a hodgepodge.
And this is a movie that's set in a sort of like urban American environment with kids who are supposed to be like ostensibly black and Latino, but they're not because they're half alien.
It's a thing. But there's some good voice work on here. Giancarlo Esposito, Michael Chiklis, Danny Trejo, and my favorite, the RZA.
Yeah, Glass. So, tell me how do you feel about?
So here's how I feel about Glass
trilogy.
I don't think it was a trilogy.
It wasn't a trilogy.
It wasn't a trilogy.
Was he thinking about this movie 20x years ago when he made?
No,
Unbreakable.
He wasn't thinking about this when he made the last one.
Even Split.
No, he wasn't. He made Unbreakable, and then he made Split for Blumhouse.
Yeah,
and then he thought, hey, I'll bet I could connect those two. I'll pretend it's a trilogy. I'll write a new movie and I'll just insert the Split world into the world of Glass and Unbreakable, and I'll get Sam and Bruce to come back and reprise their parts, except it'll be really, really low budget Blumhouse, and it'll be boring and drab, and it'll complete. Look, I didn't want a sequel to Split. I wanted something that returned me to the universe of Unbreakable, which this
Unbreakable.
does not do.
Yeah.
It does not do. It's if you like his movies, you like Unbreakable. You really like Unbreakable. That's where it kind of all comes
It's
together.
my favorite M. Night movie.
By far.
I mean, the Sixth Sense it's fantastic, but it's one watch.
But yeah, that's it. Once you know the gimmick,
you're done with that.
You're done.
But Unbreakable, though, there is a universe there.
I can watch that over and over and over.
Which one can imagine. Yeah. And it's a dramatic film, too. It's not an action. That's the thing about Unbreakable. People make the mistake of thinking that it's an action genre.
No.
It's not. No, Unbreakable is a drama.
It's drama.
As opposed to this. Anyway, this is Glass, of course, ostensibly the third installment in that trilogy, but it really isn't. 4K Ultra, all kinds of special. This is a 2-disc set. All kinds of stuff, including alternative opening and deleted scenes on this disc. So for people who are fans, and want to get into the universe, all kinds of great stuff on here to be had.
I still feel that universe is viable. I think he can revisit it again. I think he can expand on it, but he's got to get away from the Blumhouse thing. He's made this unholy alliance, this Faustian bargain with Blumhouse.
He's done 2 of these little horror movies with Blumhouse.
And he kind of owes them because they gave him a chance to go low budget and to make some movies that made money again, as opposed to this, getting out of his element. They've disciplined him a bit, but that's not the thing. It's got to stop. It's too much. So Patrick Stewart plays Merlin in this weird kind of Arthurian version of Spy Kids called The Kid Who Would Be King. And it's okay. It's on 4K for some reason. I don't think kids really care about 4K, so I'm a little surprised that this came out of Fox on 4K. But maybe that's the new Disney influence. I don't know. This is arguably from the pre-Disney regime, but still, Patrick Stewart's perfectly fine as Merlin, and the idea of kids kind of in a modern day Arthurian adventure. I guess you could even say it's like Explorers or Goonies, or Spy Kids. It's kind of trying to do all that with a modern day Arthurian angle. The Kid Who Would Be King. Look, they're cool kids, and it's fine, and it's competently made, but ultimately it's really rather silly, and it has a bunch of featurettes, and it's not that interesting. Movies Anywhere, if you want to add it to your Movies Anywhere library, if your kids actually do love it, but otherwise I would say rent it first, see if you're interested, and if you just got to have it on 4K, The Kid Who Would Be King.
If you just got to have it on 4K. A couple from Breaking Glass from the LGBT community. The first one is really terrible. It's called The Devil's Path. It's just this goofy movie. It could have been better. It's set in the early 90s on this trail in this wilderness park where gay guys would go and cruising. And all the gay guys go, walk after this trail. You can cruise other gay guys for sex and whatnot. This particular instance, on the trail, there's a serial killer, or at least something dark and sort of menacing on the trail. There are victims. People are going missing. These 2 guys find themselves being stalked and then eventually chased by whatever it is that's in the woods, killing all the gay guys. And that in and of itself is actually sort of interesting. It's fun. It's just
different.
This movie is so full of such dumb dialogue and stupid plot holes and people doing ridiculous things, retarded conversations. That happen that it just makes it a mess. You have a perfectly decent idea for a movie, then you make a mess out of it. Nevertheless, it features the audio commentary by the filmmakers. Now, the other one from Breaking Glass is called Honey Glue, and it's really, really just a perfectly lovely, sweet film about this woman who finds out that she's got about 3 months to live, and she pulls the string on her ordinary life, hooks up with this sort of a gender-bending transvestite guy, and they go on an adventure together. And it's just as beautiful a movie as you ever would want to see. It kind of reminded me of Motorcycle Diaries, if not even an older movie. What was the name of that movie? Oh, it's nice. Whoopi Goldberg and Boys on the Side was the name of that movie.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was this lovely, sweet movie. She finds out she's HIV positive and all that kind of stuff. This lives right in that zone, and it's a beautiful movie, wonderfully shot, beautifully acted. A lot of faces of character actors that you will know in this movie. Bonus features include some deleted scenes. James Bird directing Honey Glue from Breaking Glass.
Got a couple. We're going to go to some classic movies now, or some other recent stuff. But the most important stuff I want to get right into here, and this is not classic, but one is recent, one is new, and one is semi-recent. Both of them from Cohen. Full disclosure, we've done audio commentaries for Cohen. Tim and I have. We like the people at Cohen. They're sharp and they have a great library and great taste. And in 2017, they released the Aspern papers from the Henry James novella. Most of the Henry James stuff typically on screen has been associated with Merchant Ivory. They did a lot of that in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
But there are a few that obviously were made later and outside their purview and continue to be made. And you know what? This is actually really quite good. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Jolie Richardson, and the remarkable Vanessa Redgrave, Jolie Richardson's mom, star in this. And it is just wonderful Victorian Henry James stuff. It really is. It has a certain Merchant Ivory quality to it. Very, very well, nicely put together, very erudite and elegant, courtesy of director Julian Landais. But what's interesting is this is also based on an adaptation. They say it's based on Jean Pavin's scenic adaptation of the Aspern Papers. I have not been able to confirm exactly what that scenic adaptation is. I found that to be really an interesting thing. So obviously there's some intermediary piece that inspired this movie other than just the novella itself. But you know what? As a kind of a Victorian soap opera, it's in a study certainly of obsession and you know, all kinds of other lovelorn issues. It's really quite good. It's one of the more interesting James adaptations, and it has a real fascinating history to it that you find out more about with the making of featurette. And James Ivory is on here as well, so he's obviously given this something of a blessing. The other Cohen piece this week, the other Cohen release, is Blu-ray of The Great Buster, A Celebration, which is a wonderful award-winning documentary on Buster Keaton by Peter Bogdanovich. When you are Peter Bogdanovich, let us take a moment of pride here. Peter Bogdanovich started as a film critic. He was a film critic for Esquire. And Roger Corman gave him a chance to become a filmmaker, and the rest is history. But Peter Bogdanovich is still, having been a good friend of Orson Welles and having been a film critic, he is still a scholar of cinema. And so he brings both a film critic and a filmmaker's eye to the genius of Buster Keaton. And because he is Peter Bogdanovich, he is able to recruit every damn person under the sun to offer their insights and appreciations and thoughts about Buster Keaton. And I mean, it goes deep. He's got Mel Brooks, he's got Quentin Tarantino and Werner Herzog and Carl Reiner, and on and on and on. Ben Mankiewicz, Leonard Maltin, our good friend. You know, just Dick Van Dyke. Everybody shows up in here. Norman Lloyd, who, you know, is still hanging on by a thread. Is he 100 yet, Norman Lloyd?
Norman might have passed 100.
Gee whiz, incredible. So I mean, this is really just the ultimate tribute to one of the greatest filmmakers and film talents ever, The Great Buster, A Celebration. Won an award at the Venice Film Festival, and it's just superb. I can't recommend this highly enough. If you even own anything by Buster Keaton, you got to have this as well. I'm going to make my daughter watch this so she appreciates it.
1914. Norman. That's when he was born.
He's 105, and he's still freaking working.
Yeah.
He's still a production designer.
Yeah.
You're a 105-year-old man. There is a man designing movies today, right now, who was born in the year that World War I began. I just want everybody to understand that.
That's just absolutely crazy. Oh, Pamela Anderson and Barbed Wire. I remember this movie from 1996, Pamela.
Back when comic movies hadn't figured it out yet.
They hadn't quite figured it out yet. Jack Noseworthy in the film. Anyway, you know, if you remember Pamela from those days, I think this would have been right after her time on that sitcom with Tim Allen. That sort of made her little career there after a little Playboy. Well, where do all the Playboy models go? Anyway, Pamela's fantastic in this perfectly silly movie that doesn't really work, but she gets to wear that outfit with that bustier and carry that gun. And ride that motorcycle, and you can't really go wrong with that. So what the heck? Not much on here by way of special features. Roger Ebert liked that movie back in the day. The Rundown, which featured the Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who he was still just The Rock, and Sean William Scott. this might be the last real. No, actually, he made those hockey movies that were pretty good. I was about to say this might be the last real sort of like A-list Sean William Scott movie. You know, American Pie and all those movies he was in all those days back then. This was a fun movie that I liked quite a lot. Christopher Walken in it. And Rosario Dawson. This does not have much on it by way of special features in it, but you know what? The Rock still had hair in this movie.
Yeah, I know.
Still has a little bit
I
of hair.
know, it's crazy, right?
And that movie was kind of
I'd
cool.
forgotten that's a really underrated movie.
It is. It's funny, and Sean William Scott is the funniest thing in that movie. He kind of walks away with it in the way that Joe Pesci did in that first Lethal Weapon film. When he just sort of swooped into the movie. It was just the funniest thing you ever did to see. Crackdown, Big City Blues, directed by Paul De Silva, and just an in-depth look at the crack epidemic in 1990s New York City. They did a series of these films, and they really are absolutely powerful and moving, and also extremely elucidating regarding that particular issue. So check it out, 1990, 92 minutes long. The Stand-In with Leslie Howard and Joan Blondell. What's funny about this movie, which is from 1937, it's a movie about this efficiency expert that comes out to Hollywood to take a look at this movie studio and see whether or not the movie studio can be saved. The bank wants to sell the movie studio, and he thinks he can fix it. What's neat about this movie is Humphrey Bogart, third bill.
No kidding.
Third bill.
That's funny.
It's Leslie, Joan, and
you got to work your way up every step of the way.
1937. God, he was so good looking. The Stand-In. Very funny movie, directed by Tay Garnett. Again, only a 90-minute movie. Neat. So funny. Joan Blondell. Oh, my goodness. Stop it.
And we should say, with great sadness, that as we are recording this, breaking news that Notre Dame is on fire, and we've got it on the television behind us. It's obviously not going to be breaking news when this podcast goes live.
Nevertheless, this is a thing that has to be marked. You were telling me that there's a problem in Paris.
Yeah, there has been a spate of an epidemic of Catholic church burnings, arson burnings of Catholic churches all through this year. It hasn't really been reported elsewhere in the world. It's been kind of not deemed sufficiently important because when you light a church on fire in a small French town or a relatively modest city, it's not newsworthy unless it's Notre Dame. And
of course, you spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
And have connections to Paris.
I'm
Christy goes all the time.
Yeah.
My sister happens to be there right now.
Good grief. You should,
striking. Just striking.
Yeah. I mean, oh, look at that. That is just heartbreaking. That is horrible. Absolutely horrible. This is really upsetting. Wow. Well, I don't even know what to say. It's kind of puts a damper on the rest of the show.
Well,
but
didn't want to let that go unnoticed.
We will endeavor to carry on as best we can and see what happens here. But the stone structure will obviously not burn, but that leaves a wood structure that is rather still considerable.
And all the ephemerals, the relics, papers,
the artwork.
Paintings, art, the tapestries. That's the stuff that 1,000-year-old. That's almost a 1,000-year-old building. Not quite, but
yeah. Well, from the important to the ridiculous, go to a couple of films from the 80s. By Andy Sidaris. Now, Andy Sidaris is one of those guys who, back in the 80s, was able to become kind of a schlock auteur. He would write, direct, do everything on all of these kind of schlocky action movies that oftentimes had kind of a little TNA and a little beach and a little beefcake and women with guns, guys with lots of muscles, and women with lots of cleavage. That's what they were. Those things were all the rage in the 80s. They were all over the American film market. When I first started going to the American film market, that was all I saw. And these movies include Hard Ticket to Hawaii and Malibu Express. And, both of them have basically the same artwork on the cover, which is a dude with a gun flanked by a couple of hot women, and in one of them, the hot women have guns. So that's what it was all about.
Those are the really good ones.
Yeah, beefcakes and hunks and hot women. Look, these movies are absolutely ridiculous. One of them is set in Hawaii. and the other one is set in Malibu, and it's just about men being men, women being women, and somebody's got a gripe, and next thing you know, cars start exploding, and somebody's running off with diamonds, or trying to hijack a computer company or some crazy thing. None of it really makes any sense. It's all just about showing off skin. But Hard Ticket to Hawaii and Malibu Express, they are artifacts of an era, and as a result, they are somewhat meaningful. Andy Sidaris does an intro on both of them, as well as audio commentary, featurettes, and trailers. And, they were taken from their original masters. It doesn't mean they were very well photographed at the time, but they are what they are. Also, H.P. Lovecraft's The Unnameable. This is part of the Unearthed Classics line from MVD. And this was made in 1988. Same general era, has kind of a certain 80s exploitation feel to it. I wouldn't say it's all that much of a Lovecraft adaptation. Most of the adaptations of Lovecraft don't have much to do with Lovecraft. But it's all about it's like kind of a gothic vampire haunted house thing with some college students who are going to spend a night in this allegedly haunted house to disprove that it's haunted, and really all that ever happens is craziness happens, and that's the way it always goes. But for an 80s era mid-level horror film, it's okay. It's fine. It's not offensively bad. It's not terribly good, and it's got a bunch of interviews on it, and it's a nice new transfer. Some photos and trailers as well. So there it is, The Unnameable.
I have here Roadhouse 2. Which is
not with Patrick Swayze.
Not with Patrick, which is 1989. The reason why this is funny to me is because I actually worked on that first Roadhouse movie, 1989. Patrick Swayze, Rowdy Harrington film. Patrick's playing the sort of philosopher bouncer. But he could kick your butt, but he could explain to you exactly why he was kicking your butt when he was doing that. This movie here from 2000. When did they make this movie? Back in 2006.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be about that character, Doc's son, who's an undercover officer in New York, and he finds out that his uncle, who has this bar down in Louisiana, is being sort of rousted by these bad guys, and he goes down there to do what his Uncle Patrick. I can't remember whether or not Patrick was still with us when this movie got made, but it's an interesting sort of thing to do when you look back over the history of a company's few movies, and you figure out, what, if we grab the story out of the middle of that movie, and we
right.
do this and we do that, and the next thing you know, and it's his son, and you make yourself a Roadhouse 2. Started Jonathan Sachi, Jake Busey, Will Patton, one of those kind of things. Not much on here. This is not a very good movie either. But I did enjoy that first Roadhouse movie. That was a lot of fun.
The first one was good. Yeah, for sure.
Joe Camps, Benji off the lease. Benji is back. They make these Benji movies. Benji, I think the original Benji movies goes back to the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like the middle 70s, that very first Benji. Yeah. That family of filmmakers, every so often, they get out the camera and they find themselves a little dog, and they go out and make themselves one of these Benji movies. I did not see this movie, but I remember reviewing it being reviewed on the show with Christy Lemire, who has a little son, of course. And I remember her saying very specifically that her son loved this movie.
Really?
So we're going to go ahead and take the recommendation of that.
Okay. I'll if Nicholas says so, then I'm on Team Nicholas.
Let's go with it.
Sure.
Audio commentary from the director and the producer and the composers and a few other people.
We're gonna do a giveaway. We have one Blu-ray to give away of The Whole Wide World, and this is a very special movie. This is our first coverage of a title from Multicom. So I want to give a little shout out to Multicom, who we now have a relationship with. Multicom also runs The Archive and The Grapevine, which you should know about. The Archive deals with unearthed, salvaged, discovered, and restored Hollywood independent films and classic television programs. And it's a channel. It's a streaming channel dedicated to aficionados and lovers of all things classic Hollywood. Everything from Boris Karloff to John Wayne and on and on and on, right to the present day. And the Grapevine is primarily focused on documentaries and unscripted shows and TV specials and reality-oriented stuff. So they are an up-and-coming company, and The Whole Wide World is a great get for them. The Whole Wide World was a Dan Ireland movie. that basically brought Renee Zellweger to the world.
Mhm.
It came out roughly around the same time as Jerry Maguire, which really broke her through. But it
Mhm.
was made before. This was really a discovery. You know, Renee Zellweger was a discovery of Dan Ireland, as was Jessica Chastain.
Mhm.
Dan Ireland, of course, a great independent filmmaker, passed away a few years ago, and Mark and I had the privilege of interviewing him on the Stupid for Movies show that we did for a few years. And he was a wonderful guest and just a delightful guy, and really just a pleasure to talk to and know. And it's such a huge loss that he's gone, but he leaves a great filmography. And The Whole Wide World is really one of his very best films. It's on Blu-ray, and it is the story of the romance that a young school teacher had with Robert E. Howard, who, of course, was the creator of Conan the Barbarian and many
Mhm.
other great pulp novels. And there hasn't a lot of people don't really know much about Howard's life. It's a very kind of a sad, unfortunate, sheltered life, and this is a really great look inside a troubled creative mind, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, playing Robert E. Howard, and Renee Zellweger obviously playing Novaline, his the school teacher who sees something in him that others don't. And it's a really sweet period romance with all kinds of great edges to it. It's on Blu-ray from Multicom, and we're going to give one away. Send us an email to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Put the word world in the subject line and your name and address in the body of the email. And we will, by the 22nd, choose a very lucky winner. And courtesy of Multicom, send you a Blu-ray of The Whole Wide World. But really, it's a wonderful movie. Renee Zellweger came on strong in Jerry Maguire as a romantic, cute girl opposite Tom Cruise.
Mhm.
There you go. And You Had Me at Hello. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
But what she does here is she's playing a character. She's not just being a romantic lead. She's not just kind of borrowing from Tom Cruise's glow. She's got the period on. She's got everything there. You see the actress who would eventually go on to win an Academy Award, very clearly emerging. She's just absolutely wonderful. And so is, frankly, D'Onofrio. Brings a lot of pathos to a very kind of troubled and disturbed guy.
Right.
So,
Well, the velocity of Gary,
yeah, right?
D'Onofrio, and
Yeah.
Dan Ireland's the film
Yeah.
after that film, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Selma Hayek, early Selma Hayek.
No, no,
Thomas
he
Jane, Libby
did so
Dollar.
many
Yeah.
he did so many really really fine movies, and it's just so sad that
Velocity
he's
of
not with
Gary.
us anymore. Living Proof was a movie he made in 2008. Jolene was the
Oh,
movie
Jolene, yeah.
where he discovered Jessica Chastain. That was her first film, 2008 as well. So very sad, but a great movie. All right, here's a couple from Arrow. I'm gonna give you. We've got Franco Nero in Kioma. He did not only do Django, and this is kind of a similar sort of a thing. It plays about it. Plays a half-breed gunfighter after the Civil War who's just being a badass, and that's what it is. It's directed by Enzo Castellari, and it is yet another spaghetti western in the same vein as Django. It's basically a Django movie that's not called Django, and it's got Woody Strode, and it's got I'd say it's mid-level of that genre. Lots of extras, as we are getting from Arrow right now, really loaded up with interviews and commentaries, and the commentary. There's one commentary track here with spaghetti western scholars. It's very 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 good. And then obviously all the international trailers. The film from Arrow that I was surprised to get, and I'm very excited to get, is Takashi Miike's Terraformars. Takashi Miike makes more movies than anybody has a right to make. He just keeps cranking them out. I don't understand how or why, but this is from 2016. Takes place a few decades from now, although the technology is not even going to be anywhere close to being realistic within the next couple of decades. And the ever eccentric, ever prolific Miike is here dealing with a science fiction scenario where we are overcrowded on Earth, so we're trying to now overcrowd Mars. And there's a problem on Mars, which is that we have introduced cockroaches to Mars,
Mm.
and it creates problems because now the cockroaches have morphed, they've evolved, and what they've evolved into is absolutely ridiculous. They've like turned into Transformers. It's just insane. It's a ridiculous idea. It's based on a manga. I don't know that it was ever turned into an anime, but it's really kind of silly and crazy and mad all at the same time in that classic Miike way. But you know what? It's a Miike film. It's worth checking out. It's completely bonkers. I had heard about this, hadn't seen it. It's mad. It's absolutely insane. A lot of interviews on here and some making of stuff as well.
The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, which is actually just one of the most fun kind of goofy movies you could possibly ever think of. Basically, it's a Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. He travels to the Orient to help seven siblings, brothers trained in kung fu and the martial arts, try to kill the vampires that have taken their family home on the mountain. So we got a vampire movie set.
Sweet.
And it's
Love
just,
it.
it's pretty. Anyway, new 2K scan from the original film elements in an audio commentary from film historian Bruce Hollenbeck. It's just really, it's just a heck of a lot of fun. Martial arts and vampires, man. Can't go wrong.
There you go. All about it.
Superstition. This is a 1982 film. Most interesting because the producer was Mario Kassar.
And
Mario
Andy Vanya and Mario Kassar.
Those guys, Total Recall, all that stuff back to the 90s. So, this is kind of where they started with this kind of stuff. This is about a witch who was killed wrongly in the 1600s, and she returns to the present day being 1982, to wreak havoc on the descendants of those who killed her. A lot of fun in that particular way. Special features. I love the fact that they do these 2K scans from the original film elements with these. And an interview with the director, James Robertson, and the lead actor, James Houghton. Not bad.
Got 3 criterions here. 2 from Jim Jarmusch, who obviously is hot again because he's got a zombie movie with Bill Murray and opening Cannes Film Festival. So they ever keen to the zeitgeist. Criterion has given us new Blu-ray editions of Night on Earth and Stranger Than Paradise. Stranger Than Paradise, of course, is the one that started it all from 1984. And remains a really cool, funky, low-budget black and white indie from the 80s. It's sort of the quintessential 80s auteur indie. It is so Jarmusch. It's only, 89 minutes long, but there's also a Permanent Vacation is on here, which is his 1980 color feature debut, which is basically like a student film. But anyway, it's all really interesting. There's also Kino 84, a 1984 German television program with interviews and everything from, that really looks at both Permanent Vacation and Stranger Than Paradise. And a behind-the-scenes Super 8 film that Tom Jarmusch made of the movie's making. Really, it's fantastic. And the original audio commentary, of course, from 1996 with Richard Edson and Jarmusch. And then Night on Earth with Benini and a whole bunch of other people, Winona Ryder. This movie is equally bonkers. This is long, though. This is over 2 hours long from 1991. A lot of great actors in it. And this is when Jarmusch was able to sort of pull together a great cast from, he was now not an indie guy. He's now an auteur. And great score from Tom Waits. Great songs from Tom Waits. A really funny Q&A with Jarmusch in 2007 where he answers a bunch of questions that fans had sent in. It's really, really fun. And then there's a selected scene commentary from 2007 with Fred Elms, cinematographer. There's bringing everything back around. Bring it back around. And then the third Criterion title here is Jan Nemec's Diamonds of the Night from 1964, which is one of the Czech New Wave films that really, really was extremely influential at the time. This includes Nemec's 1960 student thesis film and a short documentary from 1993 all about him as a filmmaker. This is really a beautiful, beautiful film. It's adapted from a novel that's about 2 boys who escape from a train that's carrying them to a concentration camp, and they escape into the woods. And what that journey represents, both literally and existentially, it's a really powerful film. It's just got beautiful, beautiful photography and really, you can't say enough about it. It is Diamonds of the Night by Jan Nemec, one of the great pioneers of the Czech New Wave.
Wicked cool stuff. From 1985, I remember this film. It was actually pretty good, starring Sam Waterston and Kathleen Quinlan, along with the great Yaphet Kotto. Warning Sign.
Oh yeah.
Which was all set inside this this facility, this sort of biotech, biochemical facility where they were making something, and then the virus got away, the bacteria got away, and they have to shut it down and close everyone off inside. There's one of those really clever ways to make a movie back in the day, and it's all about the people who get infected by this thing going kind of bananas and trying to kill everybody else. Sam Waterston has to try to keep himself and a very young Kathleen Quinlan alive. Very young Sam Waterston, too, for that matter. Interviews with the director and the producers. You got to let me borrow this one.
All right, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm working on a project. This will be useful, too. The Manitou is another one from 1978. I remember this creepy movie. Tony Curtis, Michael Ansara, Susan Strasberg, and the great Burgess Meredith in this movie. Basically about a woman who has this tumor growing from the side of her neck.
Yep.
Except that the tumor turns out to be a 400, the reincarnation of a 400-year-old Native American, sort of demon who's going to grow out of her neck and is coming back as a reincarnated creature. This was one of the creepiest movies from 1978 in that sort of period of movies along these lines. All kinds of special features on this too. Again, including that 2K scan of the original film elements and audio commentary from film historian Troy Harwith and the executive producers of the film. So kind of neat. From who is this from? This is from Studio Canal. This is from Studio Canal. The Manitou. Yep. Great, good stuff. The Witches, starring Joan Fontaine. This is a really neat movie from back in the day. Joan goes off to Africa. And has an encounter with these witch doctors. As she goes back to the UK and takes this job in this school, she feels like something strange is going on, and before long, a boy falls into a coma. She finds a voodoo doll, and you have this whole sort of really creepy movie about voodoo and witches and the wonderful Joan Fontaine. And it's really very neat, made by Cyril Frankel. Special features include an audio commentary with the filmmaker Constantine Nassar, as well as a few other folks. And this is from the Hammer Horror Collection. Joan Fontaine, The Witches.
I love Joan Fontaine. Always my favorite of the two sisters. Yeah. She very famously said, and it is exactly what happened, that if she died first, Olivia would be mad because that's another thing that she would have done first because she won she won an Oscar before Olivia did.
That was a very ugly night. At the Academy Awards. Yeah.
So I got a bunch here I'm going to blow through real quickly from the Warner Archive collection. First off is Man from Atlantis. I'll tell you, Aquaman's got nothing on Patrick Duffy. Before Patrick Duffy was on Dallas, he was an amphibious human being on the series Man from Atlantis, which all started with this television movie in 1977.
Yep.
And I watched it. I remember when it was on.
I remember the actual movie. I was so enamored of that movie and that show.
It was great. I loved it. I loved the movie. I was so happy they turned it into a show. It was a lot of fun. And he was so good. That was my discovery of Patrick Duffy. He just had such an interesting look.
Yep.
And loved the fact that he had gills and kind of webbed hands and the whole thing. It was just fascinating. It was a really good genre show.
Yeah.
And
they did those back in the day. They would just pop up out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. And sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't.
Oh, sometimes they'd be Automan.
Yeah.
Or Manimal.
But yeah, exactly. But or like Kathy Lee Crosby in the original Wonder Woman, which didn't work, and then they reconfigured it with But no, that's great. And Victor Buono plays the bad guy here, and Victor Buono is just a great villain. He was a great villain as King Tut on Batman, and as Count Manzeppi on the Wild Wild West. And here he's basically just doing the same shtick, which is kind of also what he does in Who's Afraid of Baby Jane, or Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. He has a shtick, and it's a great shtick, and it's a lot of fun. Man from Atlantis, and it looks good too, really good on Blu-ray. Glass Bottom Boat, also on Blu-ray, which is a 1966 kind of a slapstick comedy with Doris Day and Rod Taylor and Paul Lynde and Dom DeLuise. It's a lot of fun. It's a really, really, really fun movie. And I'm so happy they decided to give this the Blu-ray treatment, the Warner Archive Blu-ray treatment. It really, really is a blast. Everybody just has a lot of fun. Arthur Godfrey is in this, for those who know who Arthur Godfrey was. Dick Martin. It's really, really crazy. It's a spy spoof, basically. But it's a spy spoof with a little bit of mad world as well. So it's got some vintage featurettes on it, including Catalina Island, which is all about an island that those of us who live here in LA know very, very well. And then the last is Cleopatra Jones.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's it. Max Julian wrote and Jack Starrett directed. And this is, it was not all. There were a lot of great black female action heroes in the blaxploitation genre. We think it's Pam Grier, but it's not all Pam Grier.
No,
there were others as well.
Jean Bell and
Tamara Dobson.
Yeah.
And Tamara Dobson just kills it here. Absolutely kills it. She is just so hot. The clothes are hot. The action is hot. It's a really, really it's just terrific. Taking down an evil drug trafficker played by Shelley Winters, who goes by the name Mommy. Shelley Winters playing drug mom Mommy. It's fantastic. It's the best. And Cleopatra Jones takes her on. Bong Soo-han, the great Hapkido master, does the action choreography here, and it's really, really good. It's a film that totally holds up. Of the blaxploitation era, this is definitely one of the better ones, and the ones that has a longer lifespan. It still looks very, very contemporary, and also really, really good performance by Bernie Casey, who does not mind letting a woman take the limelight.
No.
And then the last three, real quickly, which are DVDs only from the Warner Archive collection. A very early Mary Pickford talkie called Coquette, which was a UA picture at the time, now, of course, with Warner Brothers. And it's okay. Mary Pickford didn't quite make it to talkies with the same power, but Coquette is a decent film and historically significant. Also, A Woman of Affairs with John Gilbert and Greta Garbo. That is also a real oldie from 1928, very, very early sound film. Also has Douglas Fairbanks Jr. in a very early appearance here as well. It's a Garbo film, basically. You're watching it for her, her incredibly cool demeanor. And then Walter Huston in The Star Witness, which was a Warner Brothers Vitaphone picture roughly around the same time, a few years later. It's a pre-code film, 1931, directed by William Wellman, the great William Wellman. It's just a kind of a courtroom drama, which is perfectly fine. It's not brilliant, but it is historically significant just because of it being Wellman and Walter Huston, and the fact that it was based on I believe an actual incident. So I believe so. I'm not absolutely positive about that, but I think it was an actual event at the time. So anyway, there's that.
I got a couple of old school, sort of quasi-black exploitation films. Not exactly, but they're from the era anyway, including The Take, 1974, Billy D. Williams. Billy D. Williams in this movie with Eddie Albert and Vic Morrow and a bunch of great old actors from back in the day.
Fantastic.
Bad guy in this movie is being played by Frankie Avalon. It's a
no.
low-level hood. This cop, Billy D. Williams, played by Billy D. Williams, is chasing. Interesting other thing about this movie is set in New Mexico. As opposed to Harlem or, for that matter, Los Angeles, where most of these films were sort of set. A gritty little film. Billy D. Williams, real young in this movie. I think this was either just before or just after his turn as Gale Sayers in the television movie with James Caan, Brian's Song. So he was sort of up and coming here and would go on to do Mahogany with Diana Ross and all that kind of stuff. So Billy D. Williams, he's sometimes just the overlooked black male movie star of the year when we think about Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier and a few of these guys. Sometimes we forget about Billy.
He gets the last laugh because we see him in Star Wars Episode 9.
Yeah, Billy, who was born in 1937, which makes him what, 82?
He does not look like 82. You've seen the trailer, for Episode 9.
Yeah,
he looks like he did in 1982.
I wish he had been in the other one.
I know.
What are you gonna do? The other one on this is a 2-disc set, a double feature, is Black Gunn, which of course is going to be our boy Jim Brown. This is an interesting movie. This is kind of a political movie. Jim Brown plays the brother of this guy who's sort of like a radical politician coming up. His brother gets brutally killed, and Jim teams up with his brother's sort of a radical organization to go after his brother's killers. Classic stuff from back in the day. A lot of fun. The Take and Black Gunn. Double feature.
Well, with that, we are closing in on the end of the show now. So we will we'll pick it up again next week. Our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers and our very best wishes go out to the people of Paris, the people of France. Hopefully, this Notre Dame thing turns out to be. I'm hoping it's not sabotage. It's a tragedy no matter what. It may well be an accident. There was a lot of scaffolding around it, as there often is for renovations and whatnot. But given what's happened in France over the better part of the first part of this year, I'm afraid it isn't. We'll see you guys next week.